Hello, welcome to the secret sixth session for the Loop webinars. This one is all the IT admin questions. So we've been doing a listening tour pretty much for the last 3 to 6 months of what do IT admins need to feel confident rolling out Loop in their environment? How do they govern? How do they maintain everything that you do all day? And this session is an adaptation of a blog post that we intend to make, and we're basically going to run it straight in order from the blog. So after this, when I get a chance to press the post button, you'll see a link to that, and then we'll cover all the material today. I am joined by two of my favorite people in SharePoint. Sorry, my name is Dan Costanero, and I work on the Loop team. And, oops, wrong way. Yes.
Hi, I'm Akanksha. I am the product manager on the SharePoint team.
Hi, I'm Avi. Super excited to be here. I work on security and compliance for SharePoint.
Excellent. Cool. So they'll join us in a moment after I run through all of the very Loop specific things, and then they'll talk to you about the SharePoint specific things. So without further ado, yes, this is our fun little slide. And we should pause for a second so you can see the silly thought bubbles I put on there. But since this is on YouTube, you can rewind it later. So let's move on. And we'll jump us to what we're going to talk about today. So just really fast, we're going to tell you how we update you on changes. We're going to cover where Loop things get stored. We'll talk to you about a roadmap of when all the remaining capabilities that we've been hearing you're really waiting for are coming. We'll talk a little bit about data lifecycle, how you can govern Loop content, and what a Loop workspace is and what types of them we have. I'll show you the admin switches to turn things on or off. And then Akanksha will talk to us about SharePoint Admin Center capabilities that are coming very soon. And Abby will show us some Purview capabilities that you can both do today and that might be coming soon. So without further ado, this is a little 2-minute video. We get a lot of mileage out of this. If you haven't watched any of the other sessions, which I recommend that you do, this next video will give you an overview of what Loop is all about and how you can use it. So let's roll the video.
Say goodbye to the frustration of jumping between apps and losing track of documents and ideas. Microsoft Loop transforms the way you work, so you can think, plan, and create together like never before. Loop is made up of workspaces, pages, and components. Let's break it down. Create together with shared workspaces for each of your projects. On the Loop homepage, you can access all your existing workspaces and create new ones. In a Loop workspace, you can bring everything you need for your project together in one place. To kick off a workspace, Loop can even do the searching for you, making it easy to add existing project-related information and organize it into pages. Continue adding to your workspace as your project evolves and organize it the way you want. Loop pages are flexible canvases where you can react, comment, and build on each other's ideas. Notifications help you track the things you care about and focus on what matters, all while staying in the flow of your work. Copilot in Loop helps you ideate and co-create. Get inspired with AI-powered contextual suggestions to transform the way you create together. Don't let app barriers slow your project down. Easily share information with people outside your workspace with Loop components. Components are portable pieces of content that stay in sync across all the places they have been shared, no matter where they are updated. You can share components and create new ones, like lists, tables, paragraphs, and more, across your favorite Microsoft 365 apps. You're always in control because it's easy to see where components were shared and who has access. However you work, wherever you work, Loop enables teams to think, plan, and create together like never before.
Fantastic. Let's get to the content for today. So if you've been using Loop, hopefully all of that sounded very familiar. Here's how you as an IT admin should think about all the stuff that you just saw, because you're thinking about data governance, you're thinking about the life cycle of what people are creating, you're thinking about sharing settings, you're thinking about compliance. Let's cover all of it. Right. I think I want the slide right before this one, Aaron. Actually, quite a few slides before this one. Yes. Okay, so first thing to know is we're publishing more and more of our upcoming changes to the M365 public roadmap, which you can get to by just searching for Microsoft 365 public roadmap. And then up on the left there, you can see search for a specific item, loop. So just type loop in there. You'll find all the things that are coming up across the Microsoft ecosystem. So features that come up in Teams, things that come up in Outlook, if they come up in OneNote, you can see there's one on there for GCC environments. So we're publishing the things that are coming here. That was a frequently asked question. How do I find out what you're doing? Boom, check right here. Next thing I hear a lot of questions about is, that was a cool video. Could you help me understand where those things you're talking about that I'm supposed to manage are going? So we use a picture, and this one has worked really well. The thing on the left, the workspace that we're talking about, that's just a collection of stuff. That's what a loop workspace is. You saw it in the video. You pull all the things together that your team needs. You can put links to other documents. You can create loop pages. And when you create content, we create it in a loop workspace, which is the same thing for today for IT admins as a SharePoint embedded container. So think of them just like a SharePoint site. If you're thinking about managing them, they can attach to groups. They can be tenant-owned standalone containers like a communication site. But the place that you're storing things is just a container. And then on the right is that page. Those are just files. So think of them just like a Word file, just like a PDF. And so when you're thinking about your system of management, you know that end users are creating .loop files, and they're putting them in OneDrives, in SharePoints, or in SharePoint embedded containers with the loop workspaces. So that's basically it. It's fairly simple then to apply, how do I do this operation on files for Word docs? That's how you would do the same thing for loop. And we'll get to that later in scenarios like electronic discovery or applying sensitivity labels. All of it works the same way. And then containers, again, the same way that you would manage a SharePoint site. How do I ensure the external sharings are set? How do I, all of that stuff. I'll get to it. I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'm going to move on. Where that stuff is stored. So the question you want to answer, the question you want to put in your mind is, if I were in the place on the left, like a Teams channel or an Outlook email message, and I drug a file from my desktop into here, where would that get saved? And that's the way we mapped how everything works for loop components. So if you're in a Teams private chat message with just you and one other person, there is no shared storage for that. So we put it in the creator's OneDrive. Or if we're in a Teams channel meeting, there is shared storage that has a SharePoint site. So we put it in the SharePoint's channel folder. And then similarly, like we mentioned with the workspaces, if you're in the Loop app, that already is in a SharePoint embedded container. That's where we would put the Loop page there. So this is available. It's on our public documentation for Loop compliance. It helps you think about where all of this content is going. And just a quick reminder, if you have questions, if I'm going too fast, if this isn't clear, you should put them in the comments. We have people monitoring the comments. They'll stop me and say, hey, you messed this up. Somebody needs this clarified in the comments. So yeah, there's a little link at the bottom there. Just go there and post anything that you're thinking as we're doing this live. And at the end, we're hoping to be able to take a few questions from there as well. So let's get back to the slides. I'm going to move away from where they're stored. And now I'm going to help you understand how they're stored. And so there's really, let's see, think about this again, like, sorry, I'm thrown because I updated my slide and I had cute little pictures, but they're not in here yet. But personal is like OneDrive. So we create a user-owned container in this case, and there's only one of them. Every user will get one. And the content that you store in there is you're the custodian of the data. So anything that I would create inside that space, just like when I created in my OneDrive, I'm creating it in this personal owned container that is managed just like OneDrive. And that's just my content. Everybody gets one. And then the majority of the loop scenarios are shared scenarios. So it's a place that I create for a lot of people to work together. And there's two ways you can manage those. You can have them tenant-owned, like a SharePoint communication site, or you can have them group-owned, like a SharePoint team site, the one that you're in Teams team. And you can see in the middle there, that's the only kind that's available today for you to create as an end user. And you can specify the members that you want to be in that group. And coming soon, which I'll get to in a roadmap slide, you'll also be able to say, I would like this M365 group to be a member of this loop workspace. And then the third column is group owned. So that's if you're familiar with, booting Teams, You've got Teams tabs, you've got the channels there. If you were to create something in that space, not available for you to do today, but we hear this a lot, we would like to deliver it. I would like to make a Loop workspace for this team. All the people are already here. The group is managed. I don't want to think about who. I just want to say plus new workspace right here. That's the group managed scenario. And we're really excited about bringing that soon. Now I'm going to switch to the next slide that I have over here. Yes, perfect. Thank you. So this is kind of hot off the press. We discovered yesterday when we showed this to our TAP customers that they really liked this way of explaining it. So I'm putting my IT hat back on, and I'm going to talk through it just like we did yesterday. So when we Microsoft think about the storage ecosystem, there's basically two different kinds, like we already talked about here. There's personal storage and there's shared storage. And in a user-owned case, there's OneDrive, right? I have OneDrive for Business, and that content is managed by my user account. When my user account is deleted, my OneDrive is deleted with that user account. Then there's marketing team, like as an example of an M365 group, Microsoft 365 group. And that group exists to hold a lot of useful collaborative information. And so today in your ecosystem, there's a SharePoint site connected to all of those M365 groups, those teams that you have. And that's managed by the group as well. So if I delete this group, it will delete this SharePoint site. If I restore this group, it restores this SharePoint site. This all works today. And then finally, I can just create a SharePoint communication site that's not managed by a group. And I have a set of tools in the SharePoint Admin Center that I can manage those as well. And hopefully you're appreciating the file cabinet metaphor. I think this is the thing that started to make these things make more sense to people. Container is a synonym for this. Like, these are containers. And in the SharePoint world, we never call them a container, we call them a site. But as a general term, container is the word we use, and you'll see us use that when we talk about SharePoint Embedded. So again, on those previous slides, we were talking about when I create something in a Teams chat or in an Outlook email, when there's no shared storage for that place, we put it in your OneDrive. And those are all the places to put in your OneDrive today. When you create something in a place where there is shared storage, where Loop integration is there, like a channel meeting, it puts it in the SharePoint site that's associated with that place. And then there is no place right now today that Loop creates things and puts it in a SharePoint site that is not managed by a group. Now, so this is everything the way it happens today before we even introduce Loop Workspaces. Now I'm going to overlay how Loop Workspaces work on this. I think it was March of last year, in March of 2023, we introduced a public preview where you could create Loop Workspaces in the Loop app. So you go to loop.cloud.microsoft, you click the plus button, and you're creating a new Loop Workspace. That's a place for you and your team to collaborate. And so this SharePoint embedded container gets created in the background. It is a tenant-owned container. It's a tenant-owned workspace. And so I can put as many .loop files in there as I need for my team to work together. Last week, Monday, we made available for the first time Copilot pages. And you should really check out the video for that. Satya and Jared did a fantastic job. The Loop team's really excited about being the experience for the page itself. But when you're in Copilot chat and you ask a question of the chat and it spits out all this amazing stuff and you say, oh, this is really good. I need to put this somewhere so that I can work on it with other people and reorient it and sort it. There's a new edit and page button. And that create the Copilot page, it creates a SharePoint embedded user-owned container, because those are private by default. You're just there with Copilot, talking to Copilot. You're collecting some stuff that you may or may not decide to share later. That gets stored in a user-owned SharePoint embedded container. And then also, in the future, in the Loop app, we would like you to be able to create personal pages there as well. When you're working on something that you don't intend to share with other people, we would also put it in that pages workspace, which is your user-owned container. And then finally, a feature that we have not delivered yet, but we would like to very soon, is if you're inside an M365 team, you may need another Loop workspace. And you might say, this is the space that we are already working. This is the team of people. Let's just create a space. Boom, press the plus button. And you're off to the races, working with that team. All that storage will be managed by marketing team, which is your Microsoft 365 group. And this is the part that's really cool, is all of your governance and compliance, when I say managed, is here as well. So if you added a sensitivity label to this group, it would be applied to all of the containers in it. It would be applied to the SharePoint site that already works today. And then it would be applied to this SharePoint embedded site, which is your Loop workspace. And then last but not least, we imagine that some of the teams are pretty big. You might have like 50, 100, 200 people on that team, and they may need more than one loop workspace to think. So one team may create on a channel, the one for, I'm just thinking about my team, incident management might have one of these, and another one might have customer insights, and another one might have, whatever. And so you can create as many loop workspaces as you would need. And then just to map that to the previous slide, how you think about those, this is the personal workspace, this is the group-owned workspace, and then this is the tenant-owned workspace. Cool. I'm really excited to be able to show you that because this got a lot of applause yesterday in our MVP tap audience. So they really appreciated this unlock. Yeah, cool. Let's flip back to the slides. All right. Yes, timeline for remaining capabilities. Thanks for advancing them for me. So everything we've talked about today, I think, is about how do I manage this stuff? And I'm going to flip to the next slide. There's a big portion of these. I don't think you can see my pointer here. So I'm going to draw your attention left to right. So the left column is these things are available today. So we've already delivered them. You can find this if you search for loop compliance on the internet. Boom. A learn.microsoft.com article gives you a big table of everything we've already delivered. Then in this imminent column, think that's like right now. Sensitivity labels, or the feature crew's working on that right now. I saw them pushing a build to one of our internal rings, which is very exciting. You'll be able to finally add those to the container, which is the loop workspace. Retention labels, if you use these for managing when to delete or how long to keep, they work on the file level. Those will be available in the loop app soon as well. So you'll be able to say whatever your organization configures, but like keep for 3 years or maybe delete after 6 months. However you're using those. And then finally, coming very soon, will be right after those sensitivity labels are available on the container. The external sharing that we've already released for tenants that do not have sensitivity labels will become available for all tenants, meaning if you have sensitivity labels, external sharing will work because you now have the ability to control the external sharing with the container label. There's a message center post that'll come for that. We will not turn it on until the 30-day time elapses, so you'll be able to configure your sharing settings however you need to for your sensitivity label environment. And then this third column, coming soon. So I've already talked about the per user workspace. We mentioned it's user owned and it's managed like the OneDrive for Business. Something for you multinational corporations that is created in the user's preferred data location for multi-geo, which I believe you will appreciate. The admin management section, this is a lot of the things that you can do in SharePoint Admin Center, which AK is going to show you in a minute. So we have any updates that you make will reflect in the Loop app. Today, you may have noticed that they don't. So if you were to delete one of your Loop workspaces, your Loop app still shows it. And that means we just have to clean up a little cache that the Loop app is using there. But soon, all the changes that you make will reflect directly. So again, deletes, restores, if I change a member, if I add 5 more people, if I add 3 more owners in the admin center, all of those changes will soon show up in the Loop app. And then there's a couple SharePoint embedded admin center features, which I will not talk about because AK is going to show us. And then for member management in the Loop app itself, just like you see in Teams, where you see a list of the people that are in that group, you can say, make this one and this one and this one an owner. You'll be able to do that in the Loop app soon. And then I already talked about the groups as well. You'll be able to say, for this particular workspace, when I'm creating it, I actually want it to just be lifetime managed with the group, the Microsoft 365 group, to be clear. And so you'll be able to say, this one belongs to this Microsoft 365 group. And then for organizations that have a lot of good governance, but only on the M365 group layer, you'll be able to set a setting that says, I'm not ready for those tenant managed ones yet. I just want my users to pick a group, like make sure when they create a new Loop workspace, they say, this is the existing M365 group that I want it to be associated with. And then the last one in the coming soon, this one's kind of a big deal. I'm really excited about it. The SharePoint team is making it secure for you to specify any tool or in-house tool or third-party tool to be able to access your SharePoint embedded content. So this has not been available yet. It will be available soon. So whatever governance processes you're already using to manage your SharePoint sites, to manage your existing M365 groups, you can do that to manage your loop workspaces as well. So this is like attestation workflows, multiple owners, sensitivity labels, naming conventions, all of those things that you have existing workflows for. Those tools will be able to access your existing loop workspaces and apply to them. And then finally, we're going to do some work. Yeah, that is a good clap. And then finally, we're going to do some work so that when you create tenant-owned containers or loop workspaces, they will be created in the creator's preferred data location. I know there's some companies we've been talking to that are eagerly anticipating that. I'm going to pause for a second and think. All right, coming after. We're going to get to it. We're going to get to it. This is the longest slide, so don't worry. We're getting through it. Coming after that work, there's some remaining user workflow things to do. So like when somebody leaves the company, their OneDrive goes to someone and that person gets a notification and they can click a link and they can copy the stuff to another location if they need to. That workflow for user-owned containers, like the Copilot Pages one we showed, will be coming after. And then the admin management, there's just a couple features. And again, I'll let AK talk us through what the soon and the coming soon, but not quite right away. Usage reports. We hear this one a lot too. So, hey, I love Loop. I kind of want to see if anyone in my org is using it. Where's the button? And so there is an existing M365 usage dashboard, and we would like Loop to be included in that, and that will be coming after. And then the last two, recycle bin. Today, when you delete a Loop workspace, there's no place as an end user I can go to see all the ones I've deleted and pull them out of the trash. And so we want to build that. And then the last thing is, I showed the picture of it, but if I wanted to add, like, let's say the sales, the marketing, and the engineering team to a particular workspace, and they each have their own Microsoft 365 group, I might say, boom, boom, boom. I want to add all of those as members, and that'll be coming after. I think I got it all. I'm trying to think of the most. I think we'll cover the rest of them with the rest of the slides. There's questions we get, and if I'm supposed to answer something, people that are like helping me in the chat here, just put my name in all caps because I'm not reading any of the fun stuff on the side yet. So let's go to my last slide, and then you get to hear from other amazing people. So this is a little map picture that we drew to just kind of help you understand the existing admin settings switches. So they're already out there, and think about it as on the top, this is me controlling Loop across the Microsoft ecosystem. And then on the bottom, that's if I have a particular regulatory concern, like the financial services industry that we talked to them a lot about this, or electronic communications, I may want to pay more attention to the bottom. But if you're not in a highly regulated industry, you probably would only think about the settings on the top. And so the way that works is A is referring to, I'm turning on or off Loop components in the Microsoft ecosystem. I want them on an Outlook and OneNote and Whiteboard. And there's just one big switch for that says, hey, I either like these things or I'm not ready for some reason yet. And of course, please put your comments in of what's not ready for you. We'd love to fix that for you. C, all the way to the right, is those workspaces. That's the place that's creating SharePoint embedded containers. And that one is a separate switch. And then B, because last week we just released Copilot, we were really excited about it. We wanted to make sure that it was really easy to control that experience. So if you weren't ready for all the rest of Loop yet, but you're ready for it in Copilot, you could control that independently. And we'll continue to get feedback on whether or not people want us to merge these switches, but that's how it works today. One other thing that I will mention is what you're doing is you're controlling the creation of these new Loop components, not controlling whether or not people can access them. Because what happens is we create a .loop file, and the .loop file is a file in your OneDrive or someone else's OneDrive, or it's in SharePoint that you either do or don't have access to. So when you flip these switches, it's saying, don't create any new ones. But it's not saying delete all the files. So when you flip the switch, it disables people from creating new things, but all the existing content they will still have access to. So there will be no data loss problems if you flip the switch. And then I already said it, but for electronic communications, you can control them in Teams and in Outlook independently. And I'll just leave it at that, and we can take questions in maybe at the end or in the comments. I think. Oh yeah, and then this is just screenshots of, you've seen Cloud Policy, you've seen PowerShell, but on the previous slide, those are where the two settings come from. And so there you are. As an IT admin, this slide is just, yep, that's my life. Yes. All right. My voice is done for a little while. So you don't have to hear me anymore. I'm going to switch over to AK, and she's going to talk to you about SharePoint Admin Center and some exciting new capabilities that the SharePoint team has been working on for you to manage your Loop containers there. Over to you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much. Thanks for all the context that you've set, and it'll be a tough act to follow, but I'll try. So I will give you a demo of the experience that we provide to the tenant admins in SharePoint Admin Center to manage all SharePoint embedded containers, and in this case, Loop workspaces that are created in their tenant. So let me give you a quick demo. Here I'm logged in as a global administrator in SharePoint Admin Center so that I can manage both SharePoint sites and SharePoint embedded containers. But we also have a new role, admin role, called the SharePoint Embedded Administrator, who will be able to manage only containers if that's what the organization is interested in. Dan had just mentioned that Loop workspaces are SharePoint embedded containers. That is why, to manage Loop workspace, an admin will come to active containers, and here they can see all the containers that are created in their tenant. If you are already familiar with SharePoint Admin Center, you will notice a very familiar user experience to active sites for containers as well. And we wanted to keep the experience as coherent and familiar so that admins don't have to learn a new experience. As I said, the active containers page lists all the containers in the tenant. So admins can filter the containers by application name if they are only interested in Loop workspaces. There are other information also available for the admins, like container name, application name, publisher. Publisher will tell you whether it's a Microsoft container, in this case Loop, or published by some other application. Information like how many owners are there, sensitivity labels, and when the container was created. So let me just filter the application by Loop. And here you can see all the containers that are created in the Loop app. Now, if the administrator is interested in saying or sorting the containers by storage and want to manage the most highly used containers, they can do so by just sorting all the containers available here. The difference that you will see here that SharePoint embedded containers can have more than one owner. So we list all the owners and give information of the owners so that the admin can contact them if necessary. We also give you the owners count. So if there is a compliance policy in the organization that does not allow any workspace to have less than one owner, an admin can filter those owners and make sure there are no containers that are not compliant. An admin can view a detail of the container, and not only that, can also add membership to make sure that the workspace is now compliant. So let me clear this again and go back. Let me view the detail of the Contoso marketing material here. You will see all the necessary detail that the admin needs to take an action. An admin can add an owner. In here, I'll go ahead and add someone in as the owner. An admin can also remove an owner or reassign an owner to various 4 different roles that we provide. Now, we here as a platform provide 4 different roles like owner, manager, reader, and writer. In the future, when Loop also supports reader roles or writer roles, the capability from the platform will be available. You can also search members by their name, and you will know exactly what role that member is assigned as. Admins can also set sensitivity labels to a container to make sure that their containers are compliant. So here I'm setting the sensitivity label of this workspace. If you don't see these capabilities in your tenant just yet, they are all rolling out, so they will be available very soon. The search feature will allow an admin to search for a container. And especially in case of Purview, where the admin needs the site URL or the container URL of the workspace, this is a good way for admin to search for the container grab the URL, and plop it down in Purview and take the actions that they need to. Deletion of container works exactly like sites and also follows the same policies that the sites do. So in this case, an admin could delete a container and will get very familiar prompts where the container can be restored for 93 days. The container will be available in the deleted container page, and the admin has an option to either restore or permanently delete a container. One thing I do want to call out that the search capabilities, capability to manage by multiple geographies will be coming soon, as Dan had mentioned before. So this is all the admin capabilities that are available in the user experience. Now, let me also tell you that we also provide PowerShell capabilities for tenant admins to manage the same things that I just showed. So let's go to the slides. Thank you. The next one. Awesome. Thank you very much. So all the capabilities that you just saw that an admin can do, an admin can perform through PowerShell as well, if that's what they're comfortable with. But there is something more that we provide in PowerShell right now. That is the capability to manage the loop application setting itself. One of the first settings we launched was the setting of external sharing. So as you know, sharing for loop will inherit whatever the tenant policy is by default. But if an organization is interested to set more stringent sharing settings, they can do that by using the PowerShell commandlet set SPO application. By doing so, loop application will then follow the setting that was explicitly set for the application. Not to mention all the tenant management PowerShell commandlets used through get SPO tenant or set SPO tenant are also applicable to all the SharePoint embedded containers as well. And with that, let's see the management of security and compliance in Purview, and I'll hand it over to Abby.
Thanks, Akanksha and Dan. Let's talk security and compliance. So I wanted to walk you through a bunch of security and compliance policies and features that we support for loop content. Let's talk about the first one, audit. As you may know, audit provides organizations with visibility into many types of audited activities across various services in Microsoft 365. We have expanded audit capabilities to include all loop content. All the key events on loop content, all the admin activities on loop content, everything is now being logged in audit logs. This page should be very familiar to all of you. As you can see, like most of the key value pairs in this page are already stuff that exists in the SharePoint world. You can see the item for a specific loop file called team decision. We can see that this loop page exists in a container named CSP_some GUID. And then we can see that the file path is that container URL. And then the document library now has a folder called loop app data. So this is the file path, and we can very clearly see it in the audit logs. We can also see that the application ID denotes the loop app ID. We can see that this loop page has a sensitivity label on it. We also see two new key value pairs. One, the container instance ID, which denotes the actual container's ID. So this is the loop workspaces container ID. We also see another new key value pair that is the container type ID. So a container type ID basically denotes what kind of content resides in that particular container. So this container is that of a loop workspace, so it hosts all loop content. So this basically tells us that audit is supported on all loop content by default. You, as the compliance admin, do not need to do any additional work. So this is, like good news, because we don't have to do any additional work. All the admin activities are logged. All the key events are logged. Loop content is audit compliant by default out of the box. Let's talk eDiscovery now. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So as you know, compliance admins can use eDiscovery tools in Microsoft Purview to search for regular content stored in SharePoint sites, OneDrive, Outlook, etc. We have now expanded the capability for all loop content. So compliance admins can now use eDiscovery to search for loop content, to place loop content on hold, and export loop content. To ensure your existing investments in EFI, advanced Purview licenses, etc. are preserved, our model ensures that there is no need for any additional rules or configurations if you have pre-configured eDiscovery, DLP, or DLM policies on all of SharePoint. So this model applies to all of Purview features where policies are administered based on locations. In the screenshot on the left below, you can see that there is a eDiscovery search that is running on all SharePoint sites. If you already have this pre-configured in your tenancy for all SharePoint sites, this search will now include and expand to all loop content without any additional actions needed on your end. Let's say you don't want the regular policy or the regular eDiscovery search that you currently have for all SharePoint content, and you want something customized. We can do that. You can create and customize a new eDiscovery search that runs only on one or some selected loop workspaces. Let's say you're going through a merger. Let's say you're going through some acquisition and you want like a stricter eDiscovery search, or you want to keep an eye out on what's happening in those content. We can go do that. So let's look at a demo where we perform a keyword-based eDiscovery search. So we will be searching for a keyword titled Red Fox. So as you can see, the loop page here has a keyword Red Fox. This loop page exists in the finance workspace. We will go back to the SharePoint Admin Center that Akanksha was showing us, search for the finance workspace, get the container's URL, and perform a eDiscovery premium search. So let's copy the container URL, go to Purview eDiscovery Premium, and create a eDiscovery search. So I'm creating a collection, and I'm going to restrict the scope of this eDiscovery search to only the workspace whose container URL we just copied. So I'm pasting the value here, and I'm going to create and run the collection. All right, I'm also going to scope the collection to content that has the keyword Red Fox, as we mentioned earlier. So now that we have the review set, let's look at the results of the review set. So we can see that the file name Red Fox Marketing Plan 2024 has the metadata now, and we can see the URL is as expected. This resides in the loop app data that we already saw previously. It resides in the container that we saw earlier. And we can also see a preview of the loop file. Because this was the first version, it looks a little primitive, but we also see that eDiscovery tracks all the various versions that have happened. Let's look at DLM. Retaining and deleting content is often needed for compliance and regulatory requirements, as you may know. But deleting content that no longer has business value also helps you manage risk and liability. DLM provides admins the tools and capabilities to retain the loop content that they need to keep and delete the rest. So in the screenshot below, you will see that a loop page that got deleted by the user is still retained in a preservation hold library due to the retention policy that exists on that particular loop workspace. Again, DLM should work out of the box if you already have pre-configured DLM policies that run on all SharePoint sites, because just a reminder, loop content does come under the all SharePoint sites umbrella and should work out of the box if you have those configurations. Let's look at the DLM demo. So we can see that this organization already has a retention policy set on all SharePoint sites. The policy says retain all content for 7 years and then delete it. So now I'm going to go ahead and delete this page titled Meeting Notes. So what happens when I actually delete the meeting notes page? So I want to check that by running a eDiscovery search that I've scoped to just that particular workspace. So I'm running it on just that one location. And I'm going to see what the review set returns. So the page is loading, and we can see that it returns a whole bunch of results. So I'm opening up the meeting notes, like metadata as before. And now we will see that the path has slightly changed. Instead of the loop app data folder, now the content resides in the preservation whole library. So the content, even though it was deleted by the user, is still retained in the backend in the preservation whole library as expected. So your content is DLM proof. Okay, so moving on. So let's talk data likes. Okay, let's talk data loss prevention. Organizations have sensitive information under their control. Like they have financial data, they have proprietary data, they have health records, social security numbers, etc. To protect this sensitive data and to reduce the risk of oversharing, we need a way to prevent our users from sharing sensitive data with people who really shouldn't be having such sensitive data access. This practice is, of course, done using DLP. With DLP, we can identify, monitor, and automatically protect sensitive items. The screen here shows a policy tip that is educating users about a file that is in DLP violation. So this helps like end user know that they have some sensitive content that is in violation of their organization's policy and helps them address it. So let's look at a quick demo that expands a little bit on this. Okay, so we already have a pre-configured DLP policy in Purview. As before, we are taking the example where this policy is geared towards all SharePoint sites. And we can see that the DLP rule says if this content is sensitive and it is shared outside the organization, meaning if it's shared with external users, then notify the users and educate them. Also send an email to folks who are sharing, to the owner of the SharePoint site, etc. So I am going to go to a loop page called strategy doc, and I'm going to share this with an external user. Because this is loop content and it should come under the SharePoint sites umbrella, now I should get a warning that says you're sharing with an external user, but you have sensitive content in your document, and actually educate the user using a policy tip. So after sharing, I'm refreshing the page, and now I can see the policy tip. This should be very similar to the behavior that we see in, like WXP docs. And I also go to my inbox and I can see that I received the DLP violation email letting me know about the file that is in DLP violation. Okay, so now that we've spoken a bit about like Purview features, I wanted to switch gears and talk about sensitivity labels. So sensitivity labels can be applied on files, it can be applied on folders, it can be applied on sites today, as you know. So what's the equivalent in the loop world? Loop, as Dan mentioned earlier, has different terminologies on how we define files and folders and sites hierarchy. So a loop page and a loop component basically map to a regular file. In the screenshot below, on the right, we can see a Word file named Coastal Butterflies. This file has a sensitivity label that says confidential. Similarly, a loop user can set a sensitivity label on a loop page, as a screenshot on the left shows. We have set a sensitivity label of highly confidential and all employees. So we can see the parallelism that is drawn between the loop page or the loop component and the Word file. This is, of course, intentional because we want to make sure there is no learning curve or there is minimal learning curve for our end users. Moving on to sensitivity labels for a loop workspace. If we can go to the next slide. Thank you. Oh, thank you. So again, the parallelism of a loop workspace in the SharePoint world is to map it to a SharePoint site or a SharePoint embedded container. So on the right side, we see that when someone tries to create a SharePoint site, like a communication site or a team site, etc., they can apply a sensitivity label when they're actually creating the site. Similarly, when a user is trying to create a new workspace, they can also choose the sensitivity label on that particular workspace. So again, the parallelisms are intentional. We want to make sure that end users, find it very easy and intuitive to use sensory labels and actually secure their information. For the admin side of the house, creating a sensory label should still be the same using Microsoft Purview Information Protection tab as always. And configuration and managing the sensory labels is, again, of course, done through the Purview portal. Please note that support of sensory labels on Loop workspaces is rolling out now and should hit your tenants in the upcoming weeks. So feel free to look out for that. And that's all I had today on security and compliance. Dan or Jake, do you want to take over?
Yes, I think I'm supposed to say thank you and then throw it to Jake. So this was amazing, aka Abby. These were fantastic demos. I'm very excited that we have this recorded. These are questions we get all the time. So I'm really excited about this being out there. Everybody can watch this. I'm very excited about the features that you saw aka demoing. That was a live demo. They both did way better demos than me. I mean, you can put that in the comments too, but like a live demo of an internal build of features that you can't use yet, but you'll be able to use soon. And Abby, those are fantastic recorded demos of something that you walk people through a lot of frequently asked questions. So thank you so much. I think we have a little bit of time to take some questions, and Jake, one of our product managers on the Loop team, has been moderating things and looking through the chat. We all work for Jake now. Yeah, so Jake, why don't you hit us with some questions and maybe we'll get a surprise cameo from one of your cats.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, everyone. And thanks for those that are joining online live and for those who are watching the recording. So the first question I have, it's a common question we get from IT admins is, I see the SharePoint sites in the admin center, but I don't see containers. Why is that?
I can take that.
Thanks.
Yeah, yes, you need the SharePoint embedded admin role to see the SharePoint embedded containers. It is available in Microsoft Entra and M365 Admin Center right now, so you can assign it. The idea is to provide separation of concerns between sites and containers if an organization needs it. So if an organization only wants to manage containers, they can only assign the SharePoint embedded admin role to the admin, and that's what they'll see.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
So if you're excited about containers or want to get access, make sure you have the admin role set. The next question is a good follow-up. This is about doing things in the admin portal. The question is, can IT admins set or change sensitivity labels on workspaces? And how do you do that?
Sure, I can take that. So there are various ways using which admins can set sensory labels on Loop workspaces. The first one being SharePoint partial commandlets. So you can run the set SPO container and you can give the sensory label GUID as you do today for SharePoint sites, and you can apply sensory labels on Loop workspaces using that way. And I think Akanksha showed this a little while ago in her demo. You can also apply sensory labels on containers using the new SharePoint Admin Center and going to the containers and just like modifying the sensory labels. So these are like two ways that exist today. And the third is, of course, like what I alluded to a little while earlier, which is rolling out soon. And you should be able to do it when you actually create the Loop workspace as an end user.
Perfect. So a lot of different ways you can make sure workspaces have sensitivity labels set. Users will be able to set them and admins can check them and change them.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. The third question for Michael. Is there an estimated timeline on when tenant or group-owned workspaces will be available for GCC tenants?
Yes, the Gov Clouds. Loop is currently available. I'll give you a Gov Cloud answer, and then this fits in, tenant and group owned fits into that answer. So Loop is available Teams components in Teams chat today for GCC environments. We are about to publish roadmap items, so I'll leave it to the publish state that we publish on the M365 public roadmap when you're able to see those. But we're about to publish to bring Loop components to GCC High and DoD, and then also Loop workspaces to GCC, GCC High, and DoD. And all of those we're hoping to be available in the first half of calendar year 25. And then regarding tenant and group-owned workspaces, we believe we want the same experience in all of those clouds. So when we bring those experiences to the GCC or GCC High Cloud, it'll mirror the experience that's available in worldwide multi-tenant.
Perfect.
Yes,
Thanks,
good.
Dan, and hopefully that's exciting news for those in GovCloud. Okay, another question from the chat. This is from Matt. So is it possible for users to work around the admin switches by downloading a file, that loop file from one tenant, and uploading it to your OneDrive and a tenant that has the settings disabled? And if it's possible, maybe we put that picture of the switches up again to reference. But this is really a question around admin switches. Okay, I'll let you.
Yeah. I think the intent is Matt Hacker D says, I've got some hackers in my environment, people that like to subvert things. And yes, you could download a docx file from one tenant and upload it to another tenant and open it there, or download it from there, or share it from there. So if you enable people to put content in your SharePoint, they can put whatever you've enabled them to put there. .loop is not an exception. But if you're concerned for some reason, like let's say in the tenant A, loop is okay, but in the tenant B, loop is not okay. If you really need to block access and that creation switch is not enough, you're like, okay, people can't create things, but they're being like nasty. They're going and finding them in the tenant they're allowed to use them, and they're copying them over and using them here. You could use conditional access policies in the tenant that you don't want them to be able to open any loop experience in. So you can just target loop as a conditional access endpoint and say, sorry, nobody in this tenant gets to open those. And that would be a data loss scenario for the content that they've already created. But if you're having a use problem and you don't want people to be using it at all, conditional access is the way to block that.
Thanks so much, Dan. Let's see what other questions.
Ooh. Is this just for everybody? Can you share best practice or tip? I think, sorry. Just see if anybody else wants to talk.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, thanks. Yes, I think hopefully today you saw managing loop is just like managing files and sites. And so if you have tools for that today, just put that in your brain. Like, oh, this is how I manage SharePoint communication sites. This is how I manage M365 groups. This is how I manage docx, PDF, .loop, when I'm thinking about eDiscovery or sensitivity labels. We really wanted you to just think about this as it's just another file type in your ecosystem, and there's just more filing cabinets. And however you manage your filing cabinets, that's how you should manage the loop workspaces. So that's my tip. Don't make it more complicated than that. It's not. And if we're missing something, you could actually, we have a great place now. We're telling you right now. You can put it in the comments on this blog. You could reach out to your, if you're a Microsoft customer and you have an account team, like however you want to get in touch with us, please tell us what you're missing. But we want the tip to be manage them just like you manage all of the other things that already exist, SharePoint sites, Microsoft 365 groups, and files.
Perfect. Well, I wanted to close with one more question. We saw some great updates about Loop and Loop workspaces, about the admin center and what IT admins can do, and then security and compliance. Wanted to ask, what are you most excited about that's coming soon that we've talked about today? Like what's been on the list that you're really excited to provide new capabilities to admins and users? Dan, why don't we start with you on the Loop side?
Okay. I'm biding my time. Like, I don't want to use any AK stuff. I'm really excited about a lot of stuff she demoed, but I'll let her pick something. I'm really excited about in Purview, there is, you can get that URL from the SharePoint Admin Center, and you can use those just like you would a SharePoint site there. So I think that seeing in a demo, I'm excited about people realizing how easy it is to manage. And then stuff that's coming today, like M365 groups is huge. Like there's a lot of companies that they have a lot of good process and a lot of good governance around M365 groups. And as soon as Loop workspaces are nestled underneath those groups in their environment, they're going to feel like, there's nothing new here to even think about. Why wouldn't I have everybody using these? And so I'm really excited about that, especially from the product team, because I want people to use Loop because we like it. It's exciting. I could probably think of 10 more things, but I'll leave it at that. So.
Yeah, I can go next. I think two things that I'm very excited about is something as simple as answering the question, how can I find out containers that do not, or workspaces that do not have any owners? So a simple column that gives you the owner count and the capability to sort and filter by that. I think will really help the admins, achieve their compliance goals. And the second thing that I did not talk about, but I can give a sneak peek, is that providing capability to give the storage used by each application. So that is something we are working on as well. So you will in the future see how much storage, the sum of storage that Loop is using, or any other Microsoft application is using, so that you can take appropriate action on that application.
Lovely.
Indeed.
Cool. We are working on enabling support for a lot of security policies on all of SharePoint embedded containers, which should then trickle on to Loop content, of course. So there's a bunch of stuff that we're working on right now. I think top of my mind is maybe the default sensory labels at a doc library level. So I think that should be coming soon in the next couple of months. So I think that's what I'm most excited about.
Nice. All right. Yes, and actually our own internal Microsoft IT department really likes that particular feature too. So that's cool. I think, is this it? Are we done? We're getting close to the end of the hour here.
That does cover our questions so far. And if those people have questions after this, continue to use Tech Community and we'll do our best to answer there. We also have an AKA link to provide your feedback, aka.ms/loopfeedback. This will come directly to the product team. And we'd really appreciate all your feedback and hearing from you. It helps us make the product better. It helps make sure we're doing the right things, and love to hear what you think.
Yeah, and this slide here, this is the different one. This is Learn About Loop. This page has, like at the top, it's that video we shared at the front. And then in the middle is I'm an end user and I need to just know more stuff about it. So this is great for IT departments thinking, how do I train or inform users of this thing that's available? What materials can I send them? And then the bottom of that page, the bottom third, is basically links to everything we've talked about today. We should probably add a link to this video when we're done. So exciting stuff. That's what that QR code is for. All right. I think that's good. We've got a wrap. Let's end here. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching this. Again, if you have any questions, post them in the comment section for this. And we're super excited to bring these capabilities to you soon. Right on.